Now, back to Access Tech Live, the latest in tech and accessibility with Stephen Scott and Marc Aflalo.
Welcome back to Access Tech Live, and we're going to dive into some of these headlines we've been talking about. Of course, we're talking there about Google and that advert that they're putting into Super Bowl. You know, it's really interesting, isn't it, Mark? Because when you think about this, you know, a company like Google could talk about anything, and at the moment, everyone's talking about AI and how wonderful AI is, and as they are, but they're kind of doing this with this accessibility twist, and it's incredible to put it in front of so many people because it really does raise the profile of accessibility, something they should be really proud of, I think.
Well, we've seen them do this in mainstream, right? We've seen them put ads on across television, showcase it at keynote events and stuff like that. But I think it's pretty significant that they're using this ad spend at the cost that it is, actual monetary cost, during the big game on Sunday to actually focus on it. You know, kudos to them. You know, hats off to what they're doing because, as you said, they could be talking about absolutely anything. You know, a lot of stuff in the news these days, Stephen, getting attention. The funniest thing is I've had a lot of conversations with people about Apple Vision Pro. You know, this is Apple's, virtual reality headset, even though they don't want anybody calling it a virtual reality headset, not available anywhere outside the US. So we're stuck, peering in on other people's lives and seeing what their first impressions are of Vision Pro. And you actually put out a very cool video with Sean from the Double Tap podcast over there on YouTube, talking about the accessibility, which is something that I think it's still a little bit unknown, right? Until we really get our hands on it or eyes on it, so to speak, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, especially because we haven't heard that many reviews from the disability community as yet. Now, of course, there's reasons for that because of the price point, right? $3,599? I mean, that's a lot of money to shell out on a device.
US
just
dollars,
to review.
By the way. By the time that's
US
in
dollars,
Canada,
yeah.
that's going to be
well,
like $5,000.
It's only available in the US, right? So that's the only place you're going to get it at the moment. And, I think that the problem is for a lot of people, especially disabled people, it's not that attainable at the moment. Now, we will be hearing from people in the coming months, and we'll certainly be hearing from people here on Access Tech Live soon who are going to be testing this out. So that's great. And I really want to get that impression from different people because, this is one of these things. I read a really interesting article this week from a woman called Carrie Ann Lightly. She does this blog, and it was a really interesting article I read, which I've posted on my social, and you should go check it out. It talks about the whole concept of fully accessible. What is fully accessible? What does that actually mean? And, of course, something that's accessible to me might not be accessible to someone else. And that can create a challenge. So, what is this device going to be doing in terms of accessibility? Yeah, I mean, for me, I've got to be honest. We put the video out. We've put it out on YouTube as part of our new Double Tap on YouTube channel, which you can go check out. And it's great because we talk about some of the, almost like what we know so far in terms of the accessibility features without having the chance to try them. But what I'm also kind of finding really interesting at the moment is the amount of people who are talking about these features, getting really excited about them. And I'm just not there at the moment with it. I kind of feel because if I'm being brutally honest, I think I'm just jealous because, here I am.
Okay.
I'm not going to be able to use this thing realistically. I mean, look, I can use it. It's accessible to me. It's got lots of features in it I can use, but it's not something I'd necessarily would use because it's a lot of money to spend when I could basically get the blind version, which is a pair of AirPods Pros.
Yeah, and I just, you and I had a conversation off air earlier, which is that at the end of the day, there are going to be products and categories in life that just can't be accessible.
Yeah.
They can try as much as they want, but as long as there's a visual component, someone who can't see just will not be able to use it to the extent that they want people to use it.
Well, what I would say is I agree with that to an extent. I think that that shouldn't mean that companies should shy away from trying to make the product accessible. Again, what is accessibility, right? So someone who's low vision, I think about friends of the show like Shelley Brisbane, who's been on here. She has low vision. She could really benefit from this device. So I don't want to write off the device. I'm talking from my perspective, right? From me as someone whose vision is at a level where it's just not really attainable to me. There are many people who could get a lot out of this. So. And again, this does have, out of the gate, it's the first device I've ever seen that is out of the gate, first generation, that has got so many accessibility features. There's a guy called Brian Tong, who's a YouTuber, did a fantastic walkthrough. He's a mainstream YouTuber, doesn't talk about accessibility that often, but he did do a fantastic walkthrough of this video. on his video, talking about the accessibility features, walking through the menus inside it. Incredible. Go check that out because it gives you a sense of how much is already in there already.
Yeah, and you know what? I think we're at actually a unique advantage. Well, yes, we can't go out and buy it. I mean, listen, you can cross the border and go buy it if you want to, but I think it's kind of interesting to be sitting back and watching this develop and really get a handle on it before it even becomes available to this market. The thing that really shocks me, to be perfectly honest, Stephen, is the naming of this device, adding something and calling it Pro first generation out of the gate. I think that Pro might mean prototype, not necessarily being professional, but we will see. And we've got people coming on over the coming months who will tell us about their experiences. Earlier this week, Stephen, it was Safer Internet Day. I talked about it in the news. So many stories about AI, and with the U.S. elections coming up, with things like Taylor Swift deepfakes in the news. I mean, there are so many things that people have to be careful about when consuming news. But Meta is actually taking a lead here, and they're starting to, funny enough, use AI to actually detect AI-generated images, and will start tagging them with an icon and actually a little subtitle that says that this was generated by AI or may be suspicious. An interesting move, I think. I'm not sure how useful it's going to be at the end of the day because people are getting really clever with how they use AI to generate misinformation. Do you think it's something that you'd pay attention to?
I think this feels like the problem becomes the solution, and as a result becomes another problem. And I don't really understand how we've got here. And I worry about this because the problem is we're already in a world where everyone mistrusts everything, no matter what it is. Whether, the earth is round. If you say that these days, you can get in trouble. There's so many things you can say that just people don't agree with, and they really are against it. They find arguments against it. There's lots of this going on. And the internet and all these deep fakes, for example, are, causing problems. Look at this upcoming US election, a perfect example. Already there are robocalls being done by Joe Biden that he's not doing. And, this is going on right now. So we've got to be very careful with this. We've got to start being very careful about identity, our own identities, how that's being used, because this, of course, I think, although it's going to definitely have an impact on elections, I worry more about how this will affect people in their own lives, where someone tries to take our voice. I mean, you and I, for example, maybe someone takes our voice. I'm not suggesting you do it, please don't, but, take our voice and do something with it, try and call someone who we know. I don't know. It could really be, personally, I think it's more scary for people like us than it is for the US elections. I think we'll get over it. I think we'll get by it. I think we have enough problems to worry about than deepfakes. But it is definitely a concern. Whether AI is a solution to that, I don't know, because we always have to remember the main thing here, that, it's people, it's humans that are putting in the data. Not the robots creating it themselves, that they don't have, their hands aren't clean. So
someone's still planning this, right? So someone still at the end of the day is a human being planning it. Yeah. We're going to talk about it a bit more next week. We're going to dive into it a bit deeper and try to get some expert opinion on it, and maybe talk about some tips on what we can do as a human race to try and at least protect ourselves. But we'll figure that out next week on the show. But Stephen, when we come back from a quick break, she's the host of That Sex Show on AMI TV and AMI Plus. Rochelle Minette joins us to break down sex and disability with a sprinkle of tech on top of that. We'll be right back.
There's more Access Tech Live to come. Get involved and have your say at Access Tech Live on social media. We'll be right back.